Are you a fan of open world survival games? Or perhaps you really like barbarians? If that's the case, Conan Exiles might be the perfect game for you. This game came out in 2017, but is still averaging almost 10,000 players today. Now, Conan Exile is a hardcore survival game. This game will not hold your hand and tell you what to do. It is an open world survival game where you are free to do as you please. The game has a variety of content, ranging anywhere from base building to exploration to fighting massive monsters. If you ever played Ark Survival Evolved, you'll be pretty familiar with the concept of this game as well. Conan Exiles has multiple different game modes. You can either play single player, multiplayer, or of course host your own dedicated servers. Now, if you're playing single player or your own server, you of course can do whatever you please and set up the server just for you. Now, if you're gonna play in the official multiplayer servers, there are quite a few things to look out for. First of all, there's PvP and PvE functions, and I have to warn you, the PvP can be quite competitive and even toxic at times. Also, there are a lot of cheaters and hackers as well, which is quite unfortunate, and I hope they fix it soon. But I would highly recommend playing this game with friends, and you can either choose, of course, a multiplayer server, or you can make your own. Now, as I mentioned, this is an open world survival game, and the survival mechanics are actually quite interesting. They've added stuff that are very specific to this game. You have stuff like sandstorms, purges, and even legendary creatures. So the game will never feel the same in terms of survival mechanics, because events just happen randomly around you. Now, one of the main things to look at is the combat system. The combat is fast-paced and can be quite fun. You can dodge, attack, read behavior of enemies, and try and jump out of the way. And you have a lot of different weapons, so like dual-wielding daggers, shield, and swords. And there are some really solid RPG mechanics in the game as well. You, for instance, have a point system, so you can increase your stats like strength, agility, vitality, and this allows you to customize your own character depending on what you want to make. So you could prioritize on being really good at PvP, PvE. You of course also have an entire building and crafting system. I won't mention too many boring details, but they are very solid. The crafting is very intuitive, and the building has a nice and snap mechanic to it. And if you ever of course get bored of building and crafting, you can always go exploring. The game of Conan Exiles is massive, and you have a ton of different stuff to explore. You have different biomes like the snow biome, the desert, the jungle, and all this adds a ton to the aesthetic and the feeling of the game. And speaking of biomes, the graphics in Conan Exiles is also really solid. Now, the game is fairly old, but the graphics are good. They are cartoonish, but they are good in their own way. Also, each different zone has very different visuals, different feelings, different music, sound effects, etc. And this makes the entire game feel way more alive, immersive, and there's a great atmosphere to the game. The lore is also surprisingly good. Most open world survival games like this won't really give you any lore or story, but Conan Exiles actually has a great lore. I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's really good. Now, the game has a lot of replayability. There are multiple different servers with different settings like PvP, PvE, and also the amount of mods is ridiculous. You can probably get thousands of hours of playtime in this game with the mods alone, and therefore you can easily make this game your main game if that's what you choose to do, because you have so much different content and variety in the game. Now, let's look at some of the pros of Conan Exiles. The customization is fantastic. You can make your own character, and there's a lot of attention to detail here. The atmosphere is amazing. You feel very immersed because of the soundtrack, the visuals, and the overall feeling of the game. And I was surprisingly impressed by the mining system. It's very interesting and satisfying. It's a pretty minor thing, but I really liked it. And the combat is also really enjoyable to play in the game. Now, let's look at some of the cons. There is a general bugginess of the game, unfortunately. There are quite a few things that don't really work, both in terms of the game, but also when you look at stuff like multiplayer. There's quite a bit of desync. Server stability is not really that great. And also, of course, the massive amount of cheaters as well, which is probably my biggest gripe with the game, is the amount of cheaters. Which is honestly why I'd probably recommend, if you're gonna play the game, either play on PvE servers, play single player, or find your own dedicated server with some kind of community, as I just don't think that the online multiplayer PvP servers are worth the effort. Now, let's grade the game, shall we? So the first thing we're looking at is gameplay, and here we're looking at mechanics, systems, and does the game work as intended, and also we look at the story. And here I'm gonna give Conan Exiles a B. The overall gameplay and mechanics are really solid. The combat is good, the building, the crafting, the surviving, the exploration, those are all really good part of the game. But unfortunately, the issues, the bugs, the cheaters, the multiplayer servers, these things unfortunately rate the game quite a bit. Now, I feel pretty generous giving it a B because the cons are quite massive, but if you take my advice earlier and you don't play in the multiplayer servers, so you can't get griefed by cheaters, and you can simply just enjoy the mechanics and play with your friends, the game is really solid. Next thing we're looking at is the graphics, the sound, and immersion. Basically, you get these wow moments when the game blows you away with how good looking the game is. And here I'm gonna give the game a C. It is a good game. It looks good, and also the sound and music design definitely helps here. But you can of course tell that the game is a bit older, and also the cartoonish kind of graphics are of course not as visually pleasing as some of the more modern games we have nowadays. So I feel like a C grade is quite appropriate to this game. And for the next thing, we're looking at progression. Basically, does your effort feel meaningful? And here it's gonna depend a lot on what kind of player you are. Do you like these kind of open world survival games that's all about crafting, building, exploration, basically slowly building up, and also the customization to a character can take a long time as well. But I feel like this is very solid overall. I'm gonna give the game a B. I personally love these kind of games. I have 800 hours in Ark, thousands of hours in open world survival games as a whole. So So this game really spoke to me in a similar way. I love the progression in terms of making my character stronger, so getting more skill points, and then of course also entire building and crafting, making a better base, getting better armor, all that good stuff. And of course the overall grade of the game is then a B-. If you like these kind of games, you will also enjoy this one. There's plenty of room for every kind of player. You have so much variety in content that you can do whatever you want to as well. Now I would recommend buying this game on sale, as it's on sale quite often, as it is 40 bucks without sale, and it's also like $120 worth of DLC as well later on. Also the game is a lot better when you can play with friends or some kind of community. Consider finding or hosting your own server so you have full control over the settings and so you don't get griefed by cheaters. But in conclusion, Conan Exile is a hardcore survival game. It is a truly unique game, but if you're up for the challenge and the struggles, the game will absolutely pay off and be worth the money and time spent. I hope you found this video useful. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe if you did, and also check out the video on the screen now, as I think you also really enjoy that one. This has been Game Grader. See you next video. Peace out.